on the week of September 4th to September 8th, 2008, a Lourdes Marian Congress will take place at the renowned Lourdes Grotto in France. And this theological presentation, this theological congress, theologians, Mariologists from all over the world are coming in preparation for the visit of Pope Benedict XVI to Lourdes on that following weekend from the 13th to the 15th of September. What's the importance of this visit, and why is it significant for us, and what does it say about the Church's perspective about Marian private revelation like Lourdes? Welcome to MaryCast. This is Dr. Mark Miravalle, Professor of Theology and Mariology at the Franciscan University of Steubenville. And I'm excited to come to you through this series about this Lourdes Marian Congress, and also about one of the subjects that will be discussed at this Lourdes Marian Congress, and that is the history of Mary's co-redemption through the 19th and 20th century apparitions. But first, let's examine what this means. The International Pontifical Marian Academy is hosting, sponsoring a theological symposium on the nature of Marian apparitions, history, what in fact they are in light of the Church, how the Church discerns them, examines them, and ultimately the fruits that come when indeed the Mother of God enters human history and brings a message of returning to the gospel for the world. I like to think of Marian apparitions as sometimes the call for a global examination of conscience. How, as a world, are we doing in terms of living the gospel message of Jesus Christ in the fullness, prayer and sacramental life of the Church? Oftentimes, people will say, isn't it wonderful that in our age, in our particular era, there are more approved apparitions than at any other age in the history of the Church? Well, indeed, it is wonderful. We thank God for the generosity of the Mother coming and the Church approving and these graces being distributed. But there's another element of this, my friends, and that is the nature of private revelation. You see, if the purpose of Marian private revelation is to get us back to living the gospel, then the fact that we have a proliferation of authentic Marian apparitions also tells us we must be needing more encouragement. We must be perhaps not doing as good a job as we should as a human family in responding to God's message. And let me speak frankly with you. I think this is rather self-evident. I think reading the newspapers, I think any honest examination of conscience regarding the human family today tells us we're not doing well. We're not granting basic elements that God exists, that we are in need of conversion, that we're in need of a Redeemer, let alone in need of a co-redemptrix, and that we as members of the Church are called to participate in uniting our sufferings and doing our prayer and penance with Jesus, uniting our prayers with the sufferings of Jesus for the salvation of others. I was very struck recently in August when Pope Benedict was asked to comment on the life of John Paul II. And he said most beautifully, I'm going to paraphrase this for you now. He said, some might think of the first part of John Paul's life as the most profound, the teaching John Paul, the leading John Paul in terms of a world figure. But the Holy Father made reference to the second part of the life of John Paul II, the suffering part. And Pope Benedict said that when John Paul II, in that second part of his life, was suffering, he was releasing a, quote, redeeming force through his, quote, passion. Yeah, that's a redeeming force through the passion of John Paul II. What does that mean? That means John Paul II was a co-redeemer. That means you and I are called to be co-redeemers. We all have sufferings. We all have sacrifices, whether it's in marriages or families or people in our community or certainly people throughout the world. We hear about the ongoing natural disasters that are taking place, the continuation of the incredible starving going on in Africa, and the unevangelized throughout the world. These all become occasions of redemptive suffering. And so when Pope Benedict is using John Paul II as an example in this sense of a co-redeemer, literally making reference to the passion of John Paul II, how much clearer could it be for us that we have to do this as well? And that's why John Paul II and Pope Benedict have both linked Lourdes to the sick and have, in that sense, made a special designation of February 11th each year as the World Day of the Sick. Well, of course, February 11th is the anniversary of the first apparition of Our Lady of Lourdes. So what are the popes telling us? They're saying that the mother comes with healing graces from Jesus Christ. She comes with graces for conversion, but we've got to respond. And we're also, even in our sufferings and our sicknesses, in some sense, we could even do more for the mystical body of Jesus. We could do more for the world at times of suffering than even when we are well and up and at 'em and doing the tasks of our vocation and being busy at work and whatnot. Because suffering unites us to Christ on the cross. And the model of Mary as co-redemptrix becomes the perfect model for what we can call Christian co-redemption or ecclesial co-redemption. That means you and me, our task, John Paul II's task, a task he fulfilled so heroically to offer our sufferings, our illnesses for the salvation of souls. So, Pope Benedict is coming to Lourdes. Some of you who will see this later, he'll already have been to Lourdes. But this is not a temporally based program in the sense that I want to go through, in a synthesized fashion, a presentation that I will be giving at Lourdes to the assembled members from the Pontifical Marian Academy about the ongoing message of Our Lady through the 19th and 20th century apparitions concerning this very subject, the subject of Mary co-redemptrix, her own identity as the woman who suffered more than anyone else with Jesus Christ, and how that identity, how that role of Mary's co-redemptrix calls each one of us to be better co-redeemers. And ultimately, you're going to see these themes in the 19th and 20th century apparitions. And I'm going to pick 5 to summarize this. We're going to talk about Rue de Bac in 1830. We're going to talk about Lourdes in 1858. We're going to go to Fatima in 1917. We're going to go to Amsterdam in 1945. And we're going to go to Akita in 1973 and examine, and these are all apparitions that have been approved by the local bishop, and that establishes them as ecclesiastically approved apparitions. And we're going to go through this history. We're going to end with Amsterdam because Amsterdam was the most recent approved apparition. So we're going to use the order of when the bishop, the local bishop, has given approval to these apparitions. And this is what we're going to find. Number 1, Our Lady is the co-redemptrix like none other, uniquely suffering with Jesus for the redemption of the world. Number 2, that she continues her role as co-redemptrix in the order not only of obtaining grace, which she did with Jesus at Calvary, but also in the order of distributing grace. So yes, a further dimension of Our Lady's co-redemption is her role as mediatrix of all graces and advocate. And then number 3, that she calls very specifically in her apparitions for the solemn definition of her role as co-redemptrix, mediatrix, and advocate. My friends, it's not going to be any surprise to us that as the Church teaches this truth through the popes, that Our Lady's going to reveal the same truth through private revelation and call for a climax of the development of doctrine. Stay with us for this series on this Lourdes Marian Congress and this history of Our Lady through these apparitions so that we can have a clear understanding that this is her desire for us now. This is Dr. Mark Miravalle. Thanks for being with us at MaryCast. God bless you.